Hello, this is Trevor Lewis, and this is another video from the Voyager Middle School STEAM Lab. In this video, I'm going to try and show you how to turn a worksheet into a Google form that is fillable for your students from a PDF or from a Word document, because a lot of us are trying to adapt curriculum to make it so it's easier for the students to fill it out on Google Classroom right now. So what I'm going to do is first we're going to start off in Google. You see I'm logged in with my school account. I'm going to go to the waffle. Forms isn't here, but a lot of people don't see it even though it's actually in this menu, because if you scroll down in the menu, it's right there. So that's the easiest way, I think, to get to forms. Forms are a little bit different than Google Docs because they are not just one document that you make copies of for your students. It's one document, and when you send it to your students, you send the students the form, the fillable part of the form, not the document part of the form. They fill it out, and the form collects it all into one document. So that's why it's really important if you're sharing forms that you make a copy for another teacher. And there's some other videos out there about that, so I'm not going to cover that here. But what I want to do is I want to make a blank form, and I want to show you a quick and easy way using the snipping tool to take pictures of your worksheet and get them into the Google form. So the first thing you want to do is give this form a title, and then I always click up here where it says untitled form after I do that because it'll autofill for me. And the very first question, if you watch any of my other Google Forms videos, you know the very first question you need to ask is, what is your name? Because if you don't ask what is your name, all you're going to get is their ID number at best, or at worst nothing, and you won't know who did what. So I always require that question, and then I always go into my settings and I always collect their email address in case they don't type their name, because sometimes they won't even type their name right. They'll just type the first answer to the first question even though it says what is your name. Some students can get confused. The other thing I do, especially if you're going to import grades into Google Classroom, is you need to limit to one response. That way, when it imports, it's going to import that one response. If you want students to be able to take it over again, what I do is I import my grades in first, and then I return it back to the students. And if a student wants to take it over again, I delete the response in the Google form. That'll allow them to retake it, even though they're limited to one response. So in order to get it to self-grade, you're going to need to make this a quiz. I don't like to change any of these. Some people like to hide answers for a while, but I find it better and more effective for my students to get feedback right away. So I usually let them see it right away. This only matters if you're using Chromebooks and if you're in the same room as those Chromebooks, in my opinion. So I leave all these things on, but you can read these question marks and figure out which settings you like. What that does is it adds you this answer key option here. Without making it a quiz, you don't have the answer key option. So you have to make it a quiz if you want it to self-grade. But this question, I'm not going to add points to. I'm not going to add an answer key to, because this question is, which class are you in? If you are putting up together one of these, I don't usually like to make a copy for each class. I usually like to have one and collect it all at once. And if you want to be able to sort by class, you're going to want to have a question like this in here, where you list out the different periods they could be in. And you could have it be a multiple choice, or you could have it be a drop-down menu, right? And you would need it to be required probably. So those are the sort of two questions that I put in right at the beginning of most of my worksheets. But now we can move into turning a worksheet. So I have some worksheets that people submitted to me that they wrote themselves, so I have permission to use them for this video. So here's a worksheet. You can see that there's some directions here that go for all these questions. So the first thing I want to do, people are looking at this and it's going to be a ton of work to get this all in the Google form. Well, there is some work, but it goes pretty fast if you use the snipping tool. So the snipping tool you can find by clicking right here on this Windows search and typing in snip and opening it up. What happens is it pops open like this. So there's a bunch of different buttons here and there's a bunch of different things. For what we're doing, all we need to do is press new. It'll gray the screen out, and I can drag around what I want to make a copy of. Actually, that's not what I want. I got the wrong thing. I wasn't thinking. So I'm going to hit new. I actually want these directions first, because this tells me the format for my answer. So now I'm going to hit, for this one, I want to hit save, because it's already copied and I can copy and paste it, but I want to hit save and save it into my pictures as capture.png, because that's the default, and I'll just replace the other one. I use that as just a temporary file. So that way I always know I can always replace that one. Plus, I always know, hey, what was that snip I just saved? Well, it's capture.png because it always is. So I'm going to minimize these two windows, and I can come back in here. And if I want to add instructions for this whole next section, I'm going to go up here. Instead of adding a question, I'm going to choose add an image. And then I'm going to browse from my computer. It automatically takes me to my documents, but I want my pictures. And there it is right at the top. And I just saved it just now. That's today's date right now. So then I can choose that, and I can put it right in there. Now, if this is not looking right to you, I was like, is it going to say image title? Is this, why is it all spaced out like this? If I push the preview button, it shows what it actually looks like to the students. Okay. And it'll allow you to take the form right now and submit it, and it'll show up in your answers too. So that's what it's going to look like when you send it to students. So there's my first set of directions. Now I'm going to add a question. And this question, I'm going to go back to my worksheet that I'm working from. And now I want to know, I already have the directions, count the money, use the correct labeling. I don't know if I need these directions, but if I want them, I can put them. That answer part would be a little confusing. So I'm going to edit by just choosing the money like this. It takes a picture of it. So it could be text, it could be an image, it could be anything. And then I'm just going to go back to, and sometimes I like to hit Alt-Tab and just automatically switch because I'm fancy. But I'm going to go down here and I'm going to go to Upload. And again, it's in Pictures, and it's the top one. It's the capture, open. It'll send that up, and it'll put that right in the question. Now this is, oops, I made a mistake. Why is that the same? You know what I forgot to do? Maybe you caught it. I didn't press save here. I have to hit save and replace the one that's already there. And then let's replace this image by choosing the one that is now saved. Now it's there. Now this is multiple choice, but maybe I don't want multiple choice. Maybe I want a short answer here. And I already told them the format. So they're going to type an answer. So let's go into my answer key here. I'm going to make this worth a point so it'll auto grade for me. And I'm going to add a correct answer. So the correct answer, let's see, 20, 30. I have to do some counting live. 36 and 50, 60, 75, 79. 36, 79. So maybe, hopefully I counted that right so I'm not embarrassed later. That would be the correct answer, right? And then I can say all other answers are incorrect. Okay. Now and then I can even add answer feedback. So what if they got the answer right or wrong? Well, I could put a link or a video or to say, great job, or you did it right, or, oh, this is what happens when this happens. So you can do all of that, and then you've got your answer key. There's the correct answer, and they'll get that feedback right away, which is kind of nice. So if I add answer feedback, I might say, don't forget to put your $sign, or, did you check to make sure the decimal's in the right spot, or something like that, or like a little video that reteaches the skill, which is kind of nice. Okay. So that's how you do a single question. I can require the question, or I can leave it unrequired, and I can keep going like this. If I want to move on, like maybe this is math review and I only wanted one question like this. So now I've got this one kind of question. Let's look at some other kinds of questions and see some other ways of getting this filled in and getting the answer keys set up correctly. So I'm going to create a new section. And what this does is this section might be about, let's see, what's my next topic that I have on this PDF that I've got here. Let's do one of these word problems here. So then going back to my form, I'm going to call this word problems, just so I know which section it is. And I'm going to add a question, and I'm going to start filling this question out here in a moment. And this is, again, going to be a short answer question. And I could copy my text over sometimes. Some of my PDFs, like this one, let's see. I can select this text, and I can copy it. So if I do that, I don't have to use the snipping tool. So that's another option. If you've got selectable text, some PDFs do, Word documents almost always do, but you'll notice that there's sometimes some problems. Like when I got to the end of the line, there was no space there. So I'm going to have to put a space back in. All right. Now, you can see it automatically knew I was asking a question about numbers. And so it added this thing called response validation, which you can get to by going here. So what that does is it it will throw an error as the student is filling out if they don't put a number in. So if they don't put a number in, they'll say, if this is not a number, it'll say, hey, don't type words here, or whatever you want it to say. You can even put it in things where it's like it needs to be a whole number, or it needs to be equal to something, or it needs to be between this number and this number. So that's instant validation before they even submit it. So that is something that you can have. I'm actually going to remove it because I like it when my students label things with units. So in my answer key, though, what do we have here? Jake has 36 comic books. His brother has 25. How many comic books do they have all together? So this is just simple addition with a little bit of regrouping. It looks like my answer should be 61 here. So I'm going to add a correct answer of 61. But like I said, I like it when my students actually write 61 comic books, right? And then I might add 61 comics. Or I might add 61 comic books with no space. Because I might anticipate my students might answer it in any one of those ways, and I want to mark all of those answers as correct and all other answers incorrect. Now, it's very specific. So if I type in 61 and comics with a capital C, it'll mark that incorrect. So you have to be a little bit careful. Sometimes I add answer feedback that says something like, private comment me. Something like that, so that they don't get frustrated. So that's a feedback for all answers, it says, okay? So that's something that can show up for all answers. On multiple choice questions, sometimes you can say specifically which things are on which ones. So let's have a look at what this looks like again. So you can see I have these required questions. Here's this question, okay? And when I hit next, I get an error because these are required. So if I want to actually see what the next page looks like, I'm going to have to actually answer the required questions. And even if I fill them in with some junk and I hit next, it'll let me go to the next one. So this is what it's going to look like with that word problem we copied and pasted. So you can test this out, and if I actually submit this, you'll notice this one is not required, so I can actually submit it like this. My responses are recorded, and your students will see it like that, and they can hit view score, and it'll say, you didn't get this right, here's the correct answer. You didn't get this right, here are some correct answers. And then there's the feedback. So that's what students will see when you finish a quiz. When you're finished, students have taken the quiz, you will get right here where it says responses. So you can click here, you get a summary of responses for each question, and it tries to take a guess at what kind of graph you might like. You can look at individual responses for each question one at a time, or you can look at individual responses. These will be not in the order of name order or class order or anything like that. It will be in the order of when they took the quiz. So like this one's a test one. I actually don't want to keep it, so I'm going to press delete. Yes. Now I have no responses. If I have a whole bunch of responses and I want to see them in a spreadsheet, I push this. It will link a spreadsheet to my form. So it doesn't just make a copy into a spreadsheet. What it does is your form now is attached to that spreadsheet. If more people answer it, it'll go right into the spreadsheet. So that's kind of nice. Let's see if we can look at one more type of question. So a lot of people have trouble with math in these forms because it's hard to type pretty looking math, especially when it comes to stuff like fractions and you may have experienced this not just with Google Forms, but also in general with any sort of typing. It can be tough to type math. So if you've done a whole bunch of work on that, here I've got a Word document that somebody sent me. I'm going to show you. You can see that they type these, they use some math things, and if I copy and paste these, I'm not sure how they're going to turn out in the form because it just doesn't talk that well with this Microsoft product. So what I'm going to do instead is I am going to go and I am going to use my snipping tool again. I'm not using these PDFs anymore. I'm going to use my snipping tool again, and I'm going to do a new snip, and this time I'm going to do this part. Now, the snipping tool records the pixels here, so it's going to be really, really small if I do it like this. But what I can do instead is, when I go back here, in the Word document, I can zoom in by doing however you normally zoom in. I just held Control and scrolled the mouse. And the more I zoom in on a font like this, you can see the pixels will adjust. So if I want it to be nice and big on the form, I make it nice and big on my screen. And then when I go to the snipping tool and I hit New, it's going to be nice and big on the form. So that's kind of nice, because if you have a too high a resolution image, the snipping tool is a really great way to downsample that image, which means make it less resolution. Or if you have something really small that's text like that, you can zoom in and take a snip of it and then use that instead in your form. So here's my new section. It's going to be called Fractions. I'm going to add a question, and I'm going to put that image in that I just saved. Browse, and I'm going to go to Pictures, and it's up on top, and I hit OK. And I'm going to have that question right there, and you can see how big it is. The cool thing I wanted to show you too was that you can actually add images for your multiple choice answers too. So let's say you want to turn this into a multiple choice question instead of being a free response question. Free response fractions questions can be difficult because you might have to say, what's the numerator of your answer? What's the denominator of your answer if you want it to grade correctly, or you have to use a specific format like we did with the money. But what you can do instead is you can, in whatever method you used to create these things, you can go ahead and create some optional answers. So let's do some of that right now. So what I did here was I just typed right on top of here one of my possible answers. So to do the math real quick here, give me 17/12. If I want to make that a mixed number, that would be 1 5/12. So that's what I'm looking for as an answer. But a common mistake would be to just add the numerators and add the denominators and get 5/7. So that's what I did. I typed in 5/7 here, and then I'm going to take a picture of it, and then I'm going to hit Save. Save as the capture, replace my old one, go back in to this and say option 1 is going to be a distractor. It's going to be 5/7, which I've saved as pictures capture. It will upload it real quick. And then that's my first answer. Then I can add another option. And so then when I add the other option, I'm going to go back to my Word document. Instead of 5/7 here, I'm going to go 5/12, because maybe they somehow got rid of the mixed number part. Replace that one. Come back over here, add an option. You can see that there's just a lot of going back and forth with the snipping tool and going back to your pictures, choosing the file, opening it. You'll get really good at this if you do a whole worksheet like this, right? So the more you do this, the better you're going to get at it. Now let's see if I can remember what I said. The right answer was, I believe the right answer was 17/12. I know a lot of you math teachers out there are yelling at me right now because that's an improper fraction, so that can't be the right answer. But I'll push back and say that is how much it is. And 17 divided by 12 is just as valid a way of thinking about things as 1 5/12 is, depending on what you're actually doing with that number. So, maybe that's my right answer. Let's put that one up. Other thing you could do is you could actually put both of them up and make them both right answers. Google Forms doesn't care if you have 2 right answers in your multiple choice question. It will let you do that. So I'm going to go to my answer key here. So, all right, so here's my answer key. I think, it'll let me select as many of these as right answers as I want. And I can add answer feedback, and now I've got 2 options. For incorrect answers, I can have 1 feedback, and for correct answers, I can have another feedback, right? Like I would have also accepted 1 5/12. Okay? So that is a little bit about Google Forms and how to take a worksheet and deconstruct it and put it into a Google form. The other thing I'm going to say about that is if you want grade importing to work, you need to make sure that only one Google form is attached. You can't have a Google form and a PDF that explainer. You can't have 2 Google forms attached. Grade importing only works in Google Classroom right now if there is exactly one Google form attached. So you got to make a separate assignment for each self-grading Google form that you have. That's it. Watch my other videos about Google Forms if you want to know more about using Google Forms, and please subscribe and enjoy making some worksheets more fillable for your students.